Alexander Sadie writes, John Femina went to jail for 3 years for running an insider trading scheme while he was a banker at Wells Fargo. I spoke with him about how an addiction to Adderall inspired him to start the scheme and how he's rebuilt his life after prison. Let's hear it, Jordy. What do you think?
Oh, I mean, this is a hit piece, right?
It's rough. It's rough. And wait until you hear the scheme. It's bad.
I'm going to hold thoughts until we hear the full details.
So, the insider trading ring netted him and his friends millions of dollars before they all went to prison. It started with long hours as an investment banker and a crippling addiction to Adderall. He was a 28-year-old banker working for Wells Fargo. When he tipped off his friends about confidential deals that the bank was working on, his friends would buy shares that were in line to be acquired and then reap the profits, and then they'd funnel the money back to Fermina. In 2 years, he and his friends made more than $11 million trading off of confidential information. He spent 3 years in prison. He says he came up with the scheme while he was abusing Adderall.
Okay, and just to be clear, $11 million is an order of magnitude more money than you need. You could be trading with 50 grand.
Yep.
And have the regulators come after you, right?
It's super easy.
I had
what
a buddy,
random person bought the stock right before it popped?
Super
easy.
It's not that hard.
It's
not
easy.
that hard to find. I had a buddy whose dad is a public company CEO, and he was telling me, he told me something, and I was like, wow, like the stock is going to absolutely rip. I wish you just hadn't even told me, because I'm not able to buy it, because you can, there's more or less a direct line from the dad to the son to the son's friend. And so I'm like out super at that obvious. Point, right?
Yeah. And so they give a little background of him. He got an Adderall prescription to be able to work long hours. He grew up on Long Island, was a good kid. He was an Eagle Scout. I was an Eagle Scout. Shout out Eagle Scouts. But get it together, guys. You're bringing down the brand here. He enrolled in the Merchant Marine Academy. He served in the Navy Reserves. Thank you for your service, man. He went to Columbia Business School. Should have stayed in the military, honestly.
Yeah.
Not insider trading.
Yeah. And if you're a fighter pilot, you can do any Adderall adjacent, product, and they're like, yeah, good job making sure the plane gets out.
And there's nothing to steal.
Yeah.
So after Columbia Business School, he wanted to go to Wall Street. So he started working as an investment banker in 2009, first in North Carolina, then New York City. The hours were immediately difficult for him. He said he was a PowerPoint jockey doing the grunt work from 9 a.m. to midnight, at least 6 days a week. And we can get into what you should do if you're stuck in that role. The answer is delegate. You need to be hammering the table and being like, I'm getting, a direct report immediately, climb that ladder, get out of the analyst role as soon as you can, and be like, I'm ready to delegate this because I don't want to be doing these long hours.
You have to wonder right now, is there guys that are in his role today that are getting so good at using AI that they can actually do the job?
Well, I mean, even
you wouldn't want people to, like the whole thing, the culture there is, if people knew you were getting your work done in 4 hours or 5 hours, they would just give you enough work to get back to that point. So I don't know if there's a tangible benefit for the employee as much as the firm.
Yep. And so when I think about like the good work at an investment bank, the top guys, it's all relationship based. It's I need to find the company that wants to be sold and I
win
need
the deal.
And we need to win the deal. And I need to be golfing with the CEO of Nike. And then when Allbirds comes in or something, I'm ready to put them together. That's the value. And that's why the investment bankers get paid so much, because you basically have to pay them an option on the future business that they bring into the firm, because they can leave and they can take the Rolodexes with them. Then one level down is more like the strategy role, actually coming up with a deal that is accretive for everyone and all the shareholders get excited. And although that doesn't happen all the time, when it happens, and everyone's happy, Instagram for Facebook, that's a great example of like a good idea, a good deal, everyone wins, right? Then lower down is like, how do you communicate that? How do I turn the idea of like this deal into a slide that tells the story? And you're very good at this in the slide decks, but you don't instantiate them. You have a designer who actually takes your napkin stuff, or you work in Figma, but
something about decks though, the dynamic is that anybody who's making a deck wants it immediately. And there's always this pressure of, especially within the private market world, if you're a seed stage company that wants to raise a Series A, you want to be, sometimes founders will get ahead of it and they're like, I'm going to start my process in September, and I want to have the round done by December, and I'm planning around that. So I need the deck done by September. But usually it's hey, we had this VC hit us up, it went well, they want to preempt, but now we want to run the whole process. So we need the deck right now. And so I worked on a handful of decks in last year just for portfolio companies. And it was just always like, I just ended up staying up like basically till 2 a.m. with them, like trying to get them across the line.
But a lot of this PowerPoint jockey stuff is actually a layer below, where you're actually just taking the napkin drawing and turning it into something that looks good.
Or building comps, models.
And that can be very grueling. Now, in the post-2012 era, a lot of these firms have back offices internationally where they can take a napkin drawing and turn it into a beautiful slide. And they have whole teams of people that just do this, and I'm sure AI is coming in there. So yeah, rough time for him. He's grinding. He was taking 80 milligrams a day, twice the maximum daily dosage. That's crushing. Kept on taking the pills, made him frenetic, aggressive, and willing to take new risks. But let's go on to what the actual scheme was. Because I have some takes on this. One night in 2010, while working late, Firmina looked through some of the bank's internal folders on a shared computer drive. He saw that project folders that were changed over the weekend were likely to be tied to live deals. My mind on Adderall would go off on these tangents and come up with these elaborate schemes. At the time, he was on the hook for tens of thousands of dollars to pay a friend's mortgage. He had co-signed because the friend was struggling to pay. Firmina told his friends to buy shares in the company that he thought had a good chance of eventually being acquired. He enlisted another friend from college to buy the stock too. The friends netted north of $500K in profit from trading on the deal. Then the scheme goes on for 2 years. They use a shell company with a corporate bank account to buy and sell the stock. The biggest score was in 2012. Before Chicago Bridge and Iron's $3 billion purchase of Shaw Group. Around 10 people connected to Firmina bought Shaw stock and call options all weeks before the deal.
How did this guy do this so brazenly you actually it's so bad. Obviously illegal even to somebody outside of finance that.
Also, he's doing this interview.
It's also 10 people. Like, how did not one of those be like, hey, buddy, like I talked to my dad about this because I was like, hey, Dad, you want to do this deal with me?
Yeah.
And he was like, son, that's insider trading.
Yes. And so it's so funny because he's doing this piece to kind of rehabilitate his name and be like, hey, this is about awareness around drug abuse and Adderall, which is true. It's good. It's good to raise awareness about that. But he's saying like, oh yeah, I took so much Adderall. I came up with this crazy scheme. And the crazy scheme is something that you would be taught on day one of compliance training at any bank. Hey, if you have material, non-public information and you give it to someone else and they buy the stock and then they pay you for that, that's obviously insider trading.
It's
not like he came up with some elaborate scheme.
Like, it's like a meth addict saying, I went and stole a bunch of catalytic converters. It was the meth. Like,
it's genius. It's a scheme. It's not even a scheme. It's just vanilla fraud. It's just vanilla. It's like this.
When I was on the meth, I thought the catalytic converters were Pokemon.
There are crazy schemes where you could figure out that this signal links to this and this signal. It's like, this is just, you had information and you just gave it to your friend and they just bought the stock. It's like, there's nothing crazy going on here. It's so ridiculous that he's framing this as like, oh, I came up with this while I was on Adderall. Like, no.
This is wild. After the announcement.
Yeah.
So that when they did this big deal, 10 of them all go in, they make $7 million. After the announcement, Femina's childhood friend and the friend's girlfriend wired more than $1 million to a precious metals dealer in Manhattan to buy 550 gold bars.
It's like so obvious.
They flew to Las Vegas the next day and laundered more than 100,000 through a casino. It's
And so the FBI shows up immediately, told Firmina that he was sharing confidential information and asked him to help in their investigation. He slams the door on them, but then he started cooperating. He was arrested in December 2012, later pled guilty to 5 charges of fraud and money laundering in 2013. He reported for a 5-year sentence at a federal penitentiary in 2015. 8 other co-conspirators did jail time too. And so, very sad to see him, get into a delusions of grandeur situation where he thought he could get away with something so stupid. But I think the framing of this as a genius scheme is ridiculous.
When he checked in for his first night in jail, he brought a bottle of Adderall with him